everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Veronica with Nurturing Connections Homeschool, where I share tips, encouragement, resources, and planners to help you connect with what matters most. Now, if you're new to my channel, we have been homeschooling for over a decade. Right now, I'm homeschooling our second grader, fifth grader, and eighth graders. So we've had quite a bit of experience along the way, and my hope through this channel and through my website is just to share some lessons we've learned, some encouragement with you, any tips that have helped us along the way in order to help you in your own journey so that you may connect with what matters most as well. Now, today, what we're talking about is what you can do if and when your child gets to the point where they just are not doing their schoolwork. So this could be a situation where it's just not getting done in time, it's just not happening, you've hit this bump, and you're trying to figure out the best way through or past that. Now, we've experienced this from time to time, so I want you to know you are not alone. This is something that does happen in a homeschool journey. I'm sure it can happen in a public school journey or a private school journey as well, where the child is just hitting a bump in the road and struggling with how to move past that. So I'm going to share with you 5 things that you can consider, 5 things you can try, 5 things you can do to hopefully help you if you're walking through one of those seasons. Now, I do want to give a disclaimer first and foremost. These are things that worked for our family. My hope in sharing them with you is to inspire your own creativity so that as you're working through that problem-solving process, hopefully it'll just give you some new insights or things to consider to help you find what works best for you and your family. Now, the first thing that I put on here is relationship. So focusing on the relationship you have with your child. Has something happened within this window of time that has led to a rift in that relationship? Could it be there's been more bickering, more arguing, more anger, irritability? Are you walking through a stressful season that you are just not finding that you're having as much time for connection with your children? Is it just a season where you're burnt out? Because sometimes that happens around this time of year. But really look at if anything happened along the way that created any type of tension in that relationship. Sometimes when children are feeling disconnected from a parent, when they're struggling with relationships with their siblings or even with their peers, it can greatly affect their emotional well-being. And so when that happens, it can make it very difficult to concentrate, very difficult for them to complete their schoolwork. And so you'll want to take a little bit of time in there to step back and evaluate what is taking place. As a teacher, when I was a public school educator, the one thing that we would keep in mind is people before content. And so that was just a reminder to us that the children came first. And so you'll want to keep that in mind before you're pushing the curriculum on them, before you're saying we have to get this and get that done. Taking a few minutes, taking a half day, taking a full day, just to reconnect with your children will prove to be something that will allow you to move more quickly later on when you've made that investment in your children. So take that time out if you need to. Remember why you're doing this. This is why vision is so important in homeschooling. Knowing your priorities is most important, because if you prioritize God and family, then you'll want to keep that in mind when times are tough, because that's the easiest time when we try to take back control through whatever concrete means we can, and we forget those important things that are more valuable, that aren't as tangible physically, but will set the stage for all that learning in the process and just the relationship you have throughout that journey and at the end. You want to walk away from this homeschool journey with a good relationship with your children. You don't want to sacrifice your relationship with your children on the altar of academics. So keep that first and foremost, and taking the time to invest in your children and connecting with them is going to be important. Number 2, establishing natural consequences for not completing their work. So if you've taken that time to connect with your children and you have established your expectations and those expectations are not being met, then creating natural consequences can help your child learn that consequences are a part of life. If they get a job in the future and they don't show up to work, they will most likely be reprimanded or fired. If they decide that they are not going to complete all their duties, then they will also lose their clients or the opportunity to provide for their family. And so helping them learn those natural consequences is going to be important, and considering what that needs to look like in your home will also be important based on your children's unique needs and interests. So in our home, for example, our kids like to spend a lot of time with friends after homeschool. There's about an hour of screen time. Some days that's not a motivator. They'd rather be outside playing with friends, but that is a possibility after homeschool. And then the other option, of course, is just free play, free time, right? They want to get out there. They want to do things that they enjoy doing. And so what we have established is that friend time, screen time does not happen until everything on their school checklist is completed and the chores are completed. And so that's something that as long as I'm consistent in following up on those things, as long as I'm checking their checklist, I'm grading their work at the end of the day, I'm checking their chores to make sure they were completed, then that creates those good habits in the children to know what is expected of them and to get those things done so that they can play. And we always say things like work hard to play hard. You know, we work first, we give it all like we've got. Our job right now is to be the best students you could possibly be. That's what we're targeting. And then you get to have fun and play and enjoy the fruit of your labors. So that's how we approach it in our home. Whatever motivators your children may have, whether it's screen time or TV time, whatever it is, phone time, consider using those motivators as a reward for getting their work done, as a reward for getting their chores done, so that they start learning those natural consequences, whether they're positive or negative, in the real world as well. Now, even with natural consequences, you're going to find sometimes that the work just doesn't get done. And we went through some of those, and we've gone through some of those situations where the schoolwork didn't get done on Tuesday, got a little bit done on Wednesday, and so forth. But eventually we did come to a point where that child wanted to do something fun, whether there was a little gathering, a party, a park, or whatever it was that we were going to do that weekend. All that work got pushed over to that Saturday, and that child had to get it done before going to the party or the park or whatever it is. So those natural consequences catch up with them at some point. So even if they think, oh, I got away with not doing a whole day of school, the schoolwork doesn't go away. Just like the responsibilities in life will not go away. Just like if they went to a private school or a public school, they would be expected to make up that work. And so creating those opportunities for growth, even though it's not always fun doing that, it will be important for helping them learn how to overcome those days and how to be responsible with what they have in front of them. Now, I think sometimes as homeschool moms, we may somewhere along the line get that perspective that they worked, they homeschool, so they have to have that time with their friends afterwards. They have to go with the neighbors. They have to have that extracurricular activity. Whatever it is, that's the reward at the end of the day, that's extra and an add-on. We sometimes start going into this guilt trip place where we start thinking that because they're homeschooled, they're missing out on friends, so we have to give them that time with their friends, or they're missing out on whatever, A, B, C, or D. And so we start giving in to rewarding them before they've completed what they needed to complete. What you may find if you start falling into that ditch is that they will start creating the habit of not completing their work because they know they'll get what they want to do. They'll get to do what they want to do anyway. They may also get into the habit of skipping out on their chores, maybe doing something incompletely, just whatever that bare minimum it takes to get what it is that they're working toward. And so as a parent, it's going to be extremely important that you follow up on that you expect good work, that you expect neat work, or that you expect those chores to be done to the best of their ability, because you're setting that standard for them and you're creating those habits that are going to help them as adults. If we create habits of laziness and idleness, then they're going to struggle more later on. And so this is their training ground. This time that they have with you in their homeschool is their opportunity to grow and to learn, where they're safe and they're protected and they're cared for. And so helping them learn those lessons there is going to be of utmost importance. Another thing you want to keep in mind is if you're falling into that thinking pattern of feeling bad because we homeschool, you've got to change your perspective on it all. You've got to see homeschooling as a blessing that it is for their good, that you have protected them from something, or you've created the opportunity for something. Whatever your why is, whatever reason you're homeschooling for, you want to make sure that you see that as a good thing and a positive thing, and that you share that with your kids so that they too will embrace that and see that, because we homeschool, we get to go on these field trips. Because we homeschool, you get to hang out with your puppy and do your schoolwork on the floor, or you get to sleep in a little later. You get to finish by 2 o'clock. And so getting to see the blessing in homeschooling in and of itself will help change that perspective when they want more and they're not able to get that more because they didn't complete what they were expected to do. So keeping that in mind, sometimes it's a perspective shift on our end, and sometimes it's just the need to follow through on our end, but ultimately it's up to us to establish those expectations and help our kids rise up to them. Number 3, consider learning challenges. Okay, so having said all of that, if your child is trying hard and still not able to complete their checklist, not able to finish their schoolwork, then we do want to take a step back as parents to consider possible learning challenges. As a parent, this is probably that gray area that is most challenging, but we have to determine whether it's that they won't do that work or they can't do that work. And so a few reasons why they can't or why they might not be able to is possibly something like maybe the curriculum is too difficult, maybe it's going too quickly in that particular curriculum, maybe the topic or the content that they're studying has taken a big leap up and they are just not able to keep up at that point. Sometimes it could be an age thing, a developmental thing. Our tweens going through the ages of between 11 and 14 are experiencing this huge brain pruning process. And so as they're going through that, you may notice some of that moodiness kicking in. You may start seeing that they're struggling more with focus, or they may feel more lazy or tired and those types of things. And so considering some of those factors, but not using them as excuses, but as opportunities to grow and overcome them will be important. You want to teach your children that, yes, when something's hard, we use different strategies to overcome them. We break it up into little pieces. Maybe you look at the curriculum and you notice, there are just too many problems here. Maybe you need to cut back on a few, split it up over a couple of days, take a break and use a different curriculum, use a different resource, maybe watch it in a video format if that helps them comprehend it better. If you're dealing with special needs or learning differences, that's something else that you'll want to keep in mind. If your child has ADD or ADHD, there just may be too much mental visual stimulation going on for them to concentrate. And so you may want to consider setting up a calm, quiet space for them to do their work. You may consider playing concentration music. There's a lot of great channels on YouTube with ADHD focus music that can help them block out all that extra auditory stimulation. You may dim the lights, maybe use different colors on the walls. There are a number of strategies you can use, but creating that environment for them to be successful and will be important. If you're trying to get them to do school in the middle of the house and the dog is barking and a baby's crying and a toddler's running around, then it may be impossible for them to do that, and it may only lead to frustration and meltdowns. And so you'll want to just be aware of those factors that will set them up for success so that you can help them take that ownership in working through those challenges as well. Other examples of possible special needs could be things like autism, Learning disabilities, dyslexia, do you need to create or find resources that have the auditory component built in there, more hands-on learning for your kinesthetic learners? Being flexible and open to new ways of doing things may be important to help them overcome that as well. I have, actually my last video was on tweaking the curriculum in order to meet the needs of your children. So it was called when the homeschool curriculum isn't working, 10 things you can do. I encourage you to check it out if you need a little bit more inspiration on that piece to help your kids thrive and move past those learning challenges that they may have. All right, number 4, be flexible with the schedule. So this is another one of those areas that you'll want to consider the specific needs of your homeschool, your children, your family. What I mean by being flexible is paying attention to when your child learns best. Do they do better in the mornings, or do they wake up really groggy and just have a tough time getting going? Do they work better in the afternoons? Do they work better with breaks or studying for long periods of time? So just thinking about those things. When our children were little, for example, I used to find that starting our day outside really helped them come back and focus after that point. So every morning we'd have our breakfast. We would do a little read aloud or devotional at the breakfast table, so something like a morning time. And then we'd go outside. And sometimes that was a nature walk. Sometimes that was riding our bikes with neighbors. We actually have about 3 or 4 homeschool families nearby. So we'd go out there for a ride, take a break, swing on the swings, and then we'd come back to get started. And that just put everybody in a great frame of mind, ready to focus, ready to get started. Now, if you find that if you did that, then the kids would not ever make it back to the homeschool table, then maybe flip it around, get started immediately right when they wake up and knock out those tough subjects first. But being flexible is going to be important to making it all come together for all of your unique learners. Now, if you do have a child with ADD, another practical tip to keep in mind is trying to do something like the Pomodoro method, where you work straight for 25 minutes and you take a break for 5 minutes, and then another 25-minute block and another 5-minute break. So we have this timer here that I've shared in the past, but this visual is just so helpful for them to see. I need to work for, there it is. I need to work for this amount of time here before I can take a break. But seeing that progress along the way is encouraging, motivating, and helps them kind of stay on task for that amount of time. And then they know at the end of it, they'll get their break. So I'm going to turn this off because it's going to tick everywhere. You can do brain breaks in between. You can do your group lessons in the morning, independent in the afternoon, or vice versa. If you have a child that works better in the evenings alone because it's quieter, then that may be what you need to do for them. But being flexible with the schedule will be important to some of your kids more so than others, but keeping that in mind for those challenges where it's just not happening anymore, trying to figure out where you can make adjustments will be helpful. Now, the last thing I have on here is number 5, pray without ceasing. Oh, this is an area that I cannot recommend enough. We have gone through our very, very challenging homeschool seasons for a variety of different reasons, and so many of those days, those tough days, just brought me to my knees in prayer. This was a year that I was in the Word of God every single morning. It was a year of just learning what it meant to abide in the Lord and trust Him above all. And as difficult as things got and as hard as the days were, the Lord is faithful and He sustains us. He gives us strength. He gives us hope. And He helps us see His hand over everything as we're abiding in Him. Now, for me, what that meant was when a child didn't want to do their work or when we had a tough situation, I would literally take that minute to just step away and just pray, Lord, what do I do in this moment? How do I respond? If anything, it just brought my heart to that place of surrender so that I could respond biblically, so that I could respond lovingly, so that I wouldn't respond in frustration or irritability. or anger. And so I wanted to make sure my heart was aligned with the Lord's. I wanted to make sure I was taking captive every thought and bringing it to the obedience of Christ, that I was able to ask the Lord, help me to see these children as you do, help me to see the good, help me to treat them as you would as a heavenly Father. How should I treat them at this moment? What should I expect of them? What is happening underneath? And so just praying through those questions, praying through those struggles will be so very important in helping you have the wisdom to know how to respond to certain situations. A lot of times what we see on the surface is not what's going on beneath that. And so we can trust that when we pray for wisdom, the Lord will be faithful to give us that wisdom as parents, to know how to come alongside our children, to help them move past those struggles and teach them how to do that in a biblical way. So I want to encourage that to you. If you're in a season where things are going well, praise be to God. Thank Him. Develop that habit of being in prayer anyway, whether it's praise or whether it's adoration, appreciation, gratitude. We can always be in prayer for something, and it will truly transform how we see our children, how we see this precious time that we have with them, and how valuable this time is for discipleship and relationship building and growing them to be prepared for whatever purpose the Lord has for them. So pray over your children, pray in the moment, pray without ceasing. I want to encourage you to do that above all, and keep your eyes on what is truly most important. Thank you so much for watching. I pray that this was an encouragement to you. If you have been through a difficult season and would like to share some tips, I would love to hear them below in the comments so that others can glean from your experiences as well. And if you have any other additional questions, please let me know. I'd love to know how to make these videos moving forward more helpful to you and more encouraging to you. Thanks again. Please give me a thumbs up on your way out if you found this encouraging, and I hope to see you here next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.